Hello, you're listening to the IoT Weekly Podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode number 35 of the IoT Weekly Podcast. It's brought to you by GearForge Software. My name is Cliff, and I'm joined by my co-host and good friends Matthew and Zeineb. Hey guys.
Howdy.
Hi.
Hi.
How's it going, Cliff?
Good. And yourself, Matthew?
I'm doing great. How about you, Zeineb?
The AC is blowing and I'm the happiest I've been in days.
I guess that it's warm there.
Warm is an understatement, but let's just say that, yeah.
You're saying it's the backside of the sun?
Oh my god, no, I've had the unfortunate yet fortunate opportunity to work with some people downtown, so I don't have a car, so I have to take public transportation at noon, because that's where all the meetings are, and me just walking for an hour straight in the sun. It's just so much walking, so much sun. I love what I do in life.
So do
That sounds
the
brutal.
transportation have AC on them?
Well, if you were lucky.
Okay.
Some trains do, some trains don't. But I like a good walk because I like a good workout. It just so happens that I also like a challenge with that. So you put the sun right there.
Nice.
It works.
That's great. Great. Matthew,
Yeah.
how about you? I've heard you're dreaming code at this point.
I am. I close my eyes and I see JavaScript. Just everything is JavaScript right now.
Oh man.
Oh my
You know,
God.
I did do kind of a cool thing. So for our listeners, if I don't know if you're listening to us through a podcast app, this probably won't be very interesting to you, but we are in the process of getting our podcast set up on YouTube, and I wrote kind of a cool script to take the audio file and generate a video from it with a backdrop and some waveforms for the audio, and apply some text overlay and stuff so that I can get away with transferring all those episodes without having to do that manually.
Sure. And I think we're gonna start doing that here come August, right? If I remember right, Matthew? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going forward, our goal is to have not only on iTunes and SoundCloud and all the other distributions, because we're also on Spotify, but to also have it on YouTube. So those of you that just want to watch it on YouTube, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna try it today. So
Yeah. So that'll be really fun to see. And if you have feedback, of course, we'd love to get feedback around if you enjoyed it or not.
That makes us even more bingeable.
that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
How about you, Cliff? What have you been up to?
Up to my neck in solenoids and inductive proximity sensors. So lots of electrical circuits this week. And then also, I think I've been looking for a true use case for the Twilio API. Are you familiar with that, Matthew?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. So excited to, and I admit I may not use Twilio. It might be a scenario where I end up using Amazon's simple notification service. So we will see. But
Yeah.
finally get to do like automated phone calling, which is something I've always been wanting to play with. I'm just hoping I can find like different voices to use. Just have it all set up like with an Australian accent or something like that, or British.
See, that would be fun.
You can always get the Google AI.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Zeineb, did we get any feedback this week?
Well, I mean, we just hit the 1,100 mark.
Nice.
Whoa.
So that's very exciting to me.
And you're saying on Twitter, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We did that on Twitter, and we had a deal. If you remember a deal, everyone remembers a deal. He's been nice enough to kind of like do a little back and forth commenting with us, but otherwise we haven't had much feedback, but if you do, we'd still welcome that. So
Yeah.
please shoot us a message at podcast@gearforgesoftware.com, or you can always find us on Twitter at GearForgeIoT, and we promise our email works, and we'd love to say hi.
Yes. Well, I do want to share with you guys, I had one of the most
Um,
interesting phone calls from a concerned citizen. I've never had a call like this before.
huh.
Yeah. So I got a phone call out of Oregon, and we are, if you do an IoT search, typically though, we will show up quite often. That's just, we've done some really good digital marketing and things like that on the website. And so he was looking for an IoT consultant to basically assist him with his home has just went rogue as far as his appliances and everything else, just went crazy. And I was like, what? So I wasn't expecting that because that was like first thing Monday morning, 7 a.m. And I was like, holy buckets, this guy is up early because it's in Oregon and we're in Central Standard Time, right? So that's like 5 a.m. for him already. And he's like just flooring through. I'm like, what are you? So it took me a little bit just to realize what he was talking about. But all his appliances are brand new within the last year. Same thing with like his television. And what he mentioned, and there's still things we don't know, but we gave him some recommendations. But it sounds like um, he'd gotten some sort of virus internal to the network because he was complaining about his router and things like that, and it took over. Like his appliances are all funky, his TV doesn't work right, his phone is all wild, he's got an iPhone. He is just struggling across the board. Everybody thinks he's crazy, Matthew.
I believe it.
Yeah. It's like his home is infested with ghosts and everyone just thinks he's super crazy. He had the electrician come out and he's like, this is an electrical thing. This is like a device thing. So now he's just trying to figure out like who do I call. He wanted to call his cable company. I was like, oh, they're probably not going to be able to help you. So we gave him some path on who maybe to give a shout to, but it sounds like he got infected with a virus and it's went to all his devices in the house.
That's interesting.
And
Yeah, I would love to get a sort of debriefing on that after somebody takes a look and gets some some idea of what's going on there.
yeah, just sounds one of the most wild cases, but this is just, I mean, this is where and I thought it was interesting because we just talked about that one attack last Friday,
Yeah,
right?
the
Exactly. I was
botnet.
thinking
Yeah,
about,
Yeah, the
yeah.
botnet. Yep,
that's when
exactly.
the Huawei routers were affected, right? That
Yep,
one. Yeah.
bingo. And I just thought that was so timely that on Monday morning I get a call from an individual. Hey, my entire house has went crazy. I have ghosts.
My smart appliances are
They've taken over.
rebelling.
Yeah. I can't
Um,
control my appliances.
I was thinking about the IoT episode with all the funny devices, and I was thinking, oh no, his toaster just burnt his bread.
Yes. Yeah.
I
It's
mean, it's
except it's
obviously a
like
bigger problem.
yeah, his milk is gone bad now, right?
Hmm. I cannot say
Exactly.
that's fun every day of the week when you're trying to rush to work to have your milk go bad every day.
Yeah. So he's struggling. It sounds like it's quite the problem internally at the house. So not fun at all.
Sounds like a very interesting phone call, though.
Yeah.
Definitely. I've got to mark this up as one of the most interesting I've had in quite some time. And there's quite a bit of colorful language on his side because he's so frustrated. So,
Oh.
and I tried to empathize as best as we could and try to point him in a direction to help him out there. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, well, Zeineb, any community news?
So we have the Google Cloud Next 2018 conference in San Francisco going on right now.
Oh, that
Um,
sounds like a ton of fun.
yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna guess it's going on right now. I can't tell with the time difference. But we have Engadget. They posted a video of, if you haven't gotten the chance to go there. They posted a video of what's been happening lately and a summary and a video of Google Cloud Next 2018 under 12 minutes. So we put the link in the show notes for you to check it out. But if you managed to go, awesome. Please let us know how that went for you.
Yeah, let me know. See, do you know where they're holding it at?
yeah. Actually, I haven't looked it up. I know it's in San Francisco, but that's about it.
What's the conference? Is it the Marconi Center, Matthew? What is I feel like I'm getting the name
Yeah.
wrong. It's something like that. I know we've went to quite a few conferences at that one.
Isn't it the Moscone Center?
Moscone, yes. I know it
Okay.
started with an M. I was like
Macaroni
the
Center?
Macaroni Center. Yes, yes, yes. I'm going to a few of those and like, oh, but that place is just huge. I wonder if that's where it's at.
If
I
it's
would
huge, then
expect,
probably.
yeah.
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 Well, it's time for a word from our show sponsor, Matthew. Who is it?
Well, our show sponsor is GearForge Software. Go figure.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
Gear GearForge Software is an IoT consultant that works with companies that are ready to make their company smart. If you're looking for a partner that will live, eat, and breathe your project, then look no further than GearForge Software. You can learn more at gearforgesoftware.com.
Awesome. And so I think you're going to kick off the news here, right, Matthew? Is it time for our main segment?
It is time for some news, and I think Zeineb actually is up first with a story about sharks.
Yeah. I mean, I've never met one, but I have a fascination with sharks, and it's Shark Week on Discovery Channel. So
Oh,
that's
really?
very
Sure,
yeah.
sure, sure.
And I mean, you think Shark Week on Discovery Channel? Yes, it's sharks, but it's also AT&T. We've talked before about how they're involved with the healthcare sector, and so they're actually using Shark Week to promote their Dictum Health virtual exam room, like through the actual show. And so what's happening here is that they're using the VR on divers and on the staff in the virtual exam room to make sure everything's going well for them while they're diving and even before that. So here they mentioned that they're checking out remotely. They're monitoring critical vital signs, their ECG, their pain levels to ensure their health and safety.
Huh. What do they do during Shark
Yeah.
Week?
You mean
Well,
what kind of programming is on?
lots of
Yeah,
sharks.
do you ever watch Shark Week, Zainab?
I watched a little bit. What I remember is all the earlier documentaries of sharks are rerun, and then they also have just a bunch of divers with a bunch of sharks talking a lot about sharks, and it's crazy, crazy interesting. It's something you definitely want to tune into if you like sharks like me.
Huh. Okay.
I,
Yeah,
I,
go ahead,
yeah,
Matthew.
well, I think this is an interesting article. It's interesting that it's coming from the Discovery Channel, I guess, but I would assume these same techniques would be useful in lots of industries.
Yeah,
Right? In this
actually,
case, it's divers, but it seems like there'd be lots of industries that have maybe would have a requirement to keep track of people's vital signs remotely. I'm even
absolutely.
thinking about professional football. Yeah, remember a few years ago, Cliff, there was a football player who died during the training camp, Vikings training camp,
Yep.
from heat exhaustion or something, right?
Yep.
But it seems
Wait,
like
is
in
it
those
football or
situations,
soccer?
but it's American football,
Oh, okay.
the funny cone-shaped ball, not the
Right. That
not the
one.
round
Okay.
one.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that was like Tony Sperano
Yeah, I don't
or Corey
remember, but
Stringer. There's a few, I think.
yeah, but I remember I
Oh no,
remember the
so no,
headline.
Tony Sperano was their line coach. I think it's Corey Stringer is the one that died.
He's the one
Sorry.
who passed away.
Yep.
Yeah, it was like heat exhaustion or something like that. But you'd think, on a team like that, these
Mhm.
guys obviously in top physical condition, but also under a lot of strain. That is assuming that the monitoring isn't too bulky. You'd think that would be super useful for a team, right?
Yeah.
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 And that's where the article is actually going at. I mean, it starts out
Hmm.
with this Discovery Channel, but it goes to explain how the VR is useful for connecting patients and doctors, like whether be it on the field in dangerous areas or in remote areas, such as like just places where you cannot get doctors to physically, you can connect them through the VR, and it cuts cost, it cuts the time that sometimes transportation might take, and it cuts the threat if someone is in a difficult condition or is in danger, you cannot get to them in time, then it would just help a lot with that.
That's really interesting.
It's super interesting.
It's also a lot cheaper.
Yeah, it looks that way. Well, this is super cool, especially it looks like they're getting quite a bit of publicity leveraging Shark Week for this too, from the sound of it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
they've done a great job keeping their name in the news with quite a few different items popping here and up.
Well, it does seem like this is something that I wouldn't necessarily think of like an entertainment company, I guess, being behind. You think more like the technology company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of interesting that it's Discovery Channel.
The PR is strong with this one.
Yeah, definitely.
You are funny, Zeineb.
So do we want to talk about Google?
Yeah, I feel like we haven't talked about Google much.
Are you sure about that?
I'm just compared to some of the other folks we've been chatting about, it seems like Google's sometimes not always out there in the IoT space as much.
Yeah, I sort of agree. It seems like they've sort of been maybe a little bit behind in at least their marketing of IoT. Their kind of IoT initiatives. They have been announcing some things. So recently, I don't know if you remember, it might have been at Google I/O. They announced what was it, Android Things,
Yep.
which is their Android-based IoT platform, and they've just announced at this Google Cloud conference. They just announced basically they're calling the software, they're calling it Cloud IoT Edge, and there's a dedicated purpose-built chip to support it. But basically, it sounds like they're trying to push into this direction of machine learning and artificial intelligence at the edge. So what the vice president of IoT at Google Cloud said was that they see there are emerging needs for edge computing, essentially running data analytics and intelligence services in locations where data is collected, or what we call the edge.
Yeah.
This is important as sometimes moving all data to the cloud from sensors can be very expensive.
Yep.
And additionally, they kind of cite the need for trying to get the intelligence closer to where it's needed. So there might be cases where you need, even when you're offline, you need the intelligence, or you need it to be, you can't wait 25 milliseconds for a round trip, right?
Yeah.
You need something just right there. And so really trying to basically run the ML algorithm on the edge, right? On the edge computing device itself, which is super interesting. And at least from their diagram, so I took a look at their kind of marketing page, I guess, for Cloud IoT Edge. They actually sort of show the model. Maybe the model gets constructed in the cloud, but then pushed to the edge device. And so it's actually going to run locally there on that dedicated hardware, which is kind of interesting.
I think that's super interesting. I think this is, I totally agree. I think this is where they've got to go with the edge processing, Matthew. Especially if they've got a model that works. I can think of a couple right now and totally agree this is a solid use case.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It'll be interesting to see what their sort of cloud integration looks like. As you would want to see this being sort of easy to integrate, right?
Yep.
You'd want to be able to run workflows locally, but also probably it's incomplete locally, essentially. You probably also want to push it to a cloud where you can get all the data aggregated, do something more useful with it maybe. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that kind of shapes up. It looks like Cloud IoT Edge can run on Android things, which we would expect, or Linux-based operating systems. So that is interesting. They have two runtime components, Edge IoT Core and Edge ML, and they now have this hardware accelerator Edge TPU. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that comes together. However, it's currently alpha, so
Oh,
very,
really?
very early days here. I actually think it's interesting that they announced it this early.
Huh.
They clearly seem to want to get in on the marketing. Everybody's talking about IoT,
Yep.
and as I said, I feel like Google has maybe been criticized for being a little behind in that space. So my hunch is this is mostly marketing at this point. There is a request access for sort of the alpha here, but it's very early days.
Sure.
So we'll have to watch and see how this shapes up.
Yeah, I'd like to see how this and see how we can get our hands. I mean, if they're going to have a dev kit or something like that, do they talk about possibly like a dev board you could play with or anything, Matthew? Because this is an actual
Well,
chip, right, or not?
yeah, it's not available yet though.
Oh, okay.
So you can from this the website there, the marketing website, you can request access
Okay.
to the Cloud IoT Alpha, and you can learn more about the development board. So I'm not sure how you get your hands on one, but my hunch is they want people to request access so they can start sending you marketing material, and
Sure. So
eventually
once it's
there's
ready.
probably going to be a hardware offering
Yep.
available too. So yeah,
Hmm.
so we'll keep our eyes on this. I'm always interested. Google is really such a technology leader in so many ways, and sometimes it feels like they're maybe running a little behind in some of these spaces. So it's interesting, kind of interesting to see what they're coming up with.
Well, I'm really excited about this from the edge computing standpoint, Matthew, especially just like you mentioned, there's going to be many times that decisions need to be made and there's no connectivity, right?
Yeah.
Um, Especially if there's something out in the field for the next 5 to 10 years from a life cycle standpoint.
Well, I want to bring up something else too, because I think there's an element of distributed computing here that maybe not fully thinking about, right? That the old model is, you've got a dumb sensor and it's going to transmit all of its data to a cloud, right? Which is probably still valid. Um, but I wonder if there is something, if that device, if you don't need every data point, if you can actually do more of the aggregation basically locally, right?
Yeah.
Then how many cycles basically are you saving? How much storage are you saving basically on the cloud side, right? By having maybe some of the calculations run on these low cost devices on the edge, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know. I think there's something interesting there, especially if you could get uh, a nice tight integration between the cloud and the edge. There might be some kind of unique use cases there, I think,
Yeah,
right?
I think you're entirely
Or
right.
opportunities, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm saying I think so based off of actually client interactions. So that's where I'm coming from, Matthew. And I can think of a few already right now,
Hmm. Hmm.
because a lot of them are like, nope, sorry, we don't even want the device to be connected.
Yeah, sure.
Like
Right.
we can't have it connected because of security concerns. You can't have this connected. It needs to stay local.
Hmm.
So if you could deploy the model and then just have some sort of internal verification as far as the model, and it's I mean it's the model's gonna have to be pretty daggone tight, but I mean if you could have that squared away and you've got the model very solid, um, yeah, then I would say that would be a really slick way to do this, Matthew.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think of like AI and machine learning as being things that require a large amount of compute. But of course, that's because you're usually talking about vast amounts of data,
Yep.
right? Which requires a lot of compute. But if you have just that device's sensor data, that's it. it doesn't require a lot of compute, right?
No, it doesn't.
So it's kind of interesting. Yeah.
I wonder what the size of one of these um, ML packages is, or modules, whatever they're calling them.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I mean, just based off like what you're saying on how big that is.
I would assume it wouldn't be very large.
No, I'd be curious. It sounds really exciting though.
Yeah, it's definitely something to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I feel like our stuff to watch list is just keep growing.
Yeah, and I think it will never stop growing.
All right.
So Cliff, what do you want to chirp about this week?
Ah,
Oh no.
yes, you're so funny. Well, it may be about my dock because all the daggone boards floated away. So I got to figure something else out for the dock. But that's not what I want to chirp about. What I want to chirp about is actually a story coming from Internet of Business. This was reported by Malik Mirson on July 26th. And the company Chirp, CHIRP.io, is actually transmitting data as sound waves.
What?
Oh, I think I heard about this.
Yeah. So they're transmitting data using sound waves at both audible and ultrasonic frequencies. Essentially, it looks like it's in a bandwidth that is available for them to leverage, right? Um, and so I ended up skipping the article because it sounded really interesting. Because one of the things I was curious is like, I can easily see this as an opportunity because number one, there's many cases where you can't actually leverage RF in some facilities, Matthew, just because it actually will interfere with processing equipment.
Sure.
I was at a mine not too long ago, and they, in some of their stuff, they can't have any RF around those items.
Huh.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so
makes sense.
they have to have all, and so they can't do anything. Um, so in this chirp scenario, it says that actually is designed to be robust over different distances of several meters. So it's not like this is a long, because I was like, with sound, I wouldn't think you get long distances out of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're comparing it to, let's say, I don't know, an RF device where you'd have it in a room, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so they're saying it's several meters in noisy everyday environments. Um, so, and the interesting part to this though is their thing is like you can broadcast the sound. You can have one-to-one or one-to-many type transmissions. So they're saying the nice thing with sound is you can have a soundproof room and be able to transmit data through the noise and not have to worry about it leaving the room.
Yeah, I actually saw a demo of something like this, except
Did you?
it wasn't IoT. It was actually a web-based
Huh.
tool. And basically it was kind of crazy, but it allowed you to like imagine two computers, both with microphones, obviously, and you're on a web page, and the web page like um, plays this sound.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of like an old-fashioned modem almost. Maybe not
Oh,
as
sure.
annoying, but kind of like that,
Yeah.
through the speaker. And the second, you know, computer with the microphone, basically the web page then downloads that as a file.
Sure.
So all done through whatever the open, web specification for audio is, right?
Hmm.
But so that file was actually transferred via audio, not network, from
Huh.
computer to computer,
That's so
which is
strange.
kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the article goes on to say, hey, compared to Wi-Fi, data over sound has a slower transmission rate. Um, but the same thing is, let's say you're trying to leverage Bluetooth, right? The pairing process can be a nightmare, right? In many cases, I have problems where my devices fail, they lose each other. And I've known of a few different devices where it actually leverages Bluetooth, kind of that BLE, so um, Bluetooth low energy type scenario. But they still have to pair up and you still have to have an app for that type of thing. And in most cases, your phone and everything else already has a speaker, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So it could just be sitting there in the background listening for this encrypted signal and be able to leverage it from that way in a more passive standpoint. So I'm just curious. The curiosity I have is I'm curious. I mean, what is several meters and what type of? I mean, what does that
Yeah.
mean, right? And the other piece I'm curious about is with regards to transmitting that over, let's say, a speaker, if you've got something or a small
Yeah.
device, what's the power consumption of something like that, right?
Sure.
Because the longer the distance, the more power it's going to take.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I would assume there would be like data loss, right, in a format like that. However, I mean, there must be a checksum process or something on the other end to make sure that everything was transferred correctly, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at again. I'm looking at their Chirp Connect overview on their developer area.
Hmm.
It doesn't have a lot in here, Matthew, as far as that.
No,
I
I'm
mean,
on the web page too.
yeah, they've got. It looks like it's the SDK is right here, so you just need to sign up for credentials. I don't even know if there's a cost. I don't see
Yeah, they
anything.
got a Python SDK, Cliff,
I actually went to
like
Python first.
like the rest of the world.
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
loves
I was doing
Python.
so I was telling Matthew earlier this week I had an electrical problem I needed to solve and ended up writing a Python script to help me figure out the best resistances. And it was the coolest thing and the simplest thing compared to like trying to fire up a Java or a C sharp where you got to go through all the stuff to get it to work, right? Instead of like 5 minutes later, you get your script running.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just think it's funny everywhere. Everybody has a
Well, and the reason they're pushing the Python 3 is for your Raspberry Pi. That's what they're really
yeah,
targeting in the SDK here.
yeah, it's
So
interesting.
it's saying an external USB microphone would have to be used when hooking it up to the Raspberry Pi. So Zeineb, remember I wonder if we could get this to work with your tone or your musical thing that we built.
Ooh, yeah, that would be very interesting to try out.
And have a couple different devices here in the office talking to each other. So yeah, really interesting. I think it's kind of the initial stages for this, but one of the other applications that was talking about is power plants and things like that, Matthew, where in many cases the information needs to stay there and they're not allowed to use RF.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense. It's
Oh,
actually really
yeah.
interesting. I think this would be fun to play with.
I think so
Add it
too.
to the list.
I will add this to our list. It just grew again. So, yep, super interesting, super fun. I will try to reach out to these guys and see if we can't maybe get a podcast. I think this would be a
Oh,
really fun
That would be so
that'd
podcast
be
fun.
a
with these
great
guys.
interview.
So
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll see if I can't reach out.
fantastic. Well, guys, that wraps up the news for this week. So,
Already?
if yeah, I know
Yeah.
it went fast.
Yeah.
And folks, if you have any feedback for us, shoot us a message at podcast@gearforgesoftware.com, or you can find us on Twitter at GearForgeIoT. We would love to hear from you. Send us your questions, your comments, your concerns. If you have episode ideas, your recipes, still looking for a soup recipe from somebody.
Yeah, Rogue appliances.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, your Rogue appliances,
Your
exactly.
Rogue toaster.
Yes, we want to hear from that. Yeah, we want to hear about that. All right. Well, do you guys have anything fun planned for the weekend? Cliff, how about you?
I'm going to test out that dock thing, and I am going to a concert tonight. Def Leppard and Journey are here in town. So
Wow.
the wife and I are heading out, and it's our anniversary on the 30th, so we're kind of going to make this kind of an anniversary type scenario.
Nice. It's
Well,
like you're
happy
going back in
anniversary.
time.
I
So
know.
you're taking the DeLorean and you're going back
It's going to be
to like the 1980s
so much fun.
for
I'm
this
going to sing
concert.
along to all the songs. I will be off key and probably one of the worst people to be standing next to.
It's usually
Excellent.
too loud for anyone to notice.
Yes, that's what I'm hoping for.
Usually.
That sounds like fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Zeineb, how about you?
It's gonna be an exciting week. I hope. We have a road trip tomorrow. Probably gonna, despite the fact that I live 10 minutes away from the beach, probably gonna drive for an hour and a half to go to another beach. And I might have Tatooine coming up this week as well.
Ooh, now what does that mean?
So we have the equivalent of a TED Talk happening all the way in the south, so like a 9-hour drive away in Tatooine on the Star Wars set. And
Wow.
Wow.
I know I got Yeah, I got almost shouted at for not saying that I live near that place before, so I'm
Yeah,
gonna
you
be
did.
trying.
Yeah, I do remember. I think I might have been one of the people yelling at you.
That was a big deal.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's a big
What?
deal. So yeah, if we do end up going, I'll just bring some bags of sand from Tatooine and sell those or something.
That sounds like a great idea.
That'd be a great giveaway on the podcast.
Just
Yeah.
Tatooine sand.
How do we verify that it's Tatooine sand, though?
You're just gonna have to trust me. I said it on the internet, so I must be right.
It was on YouTube.
That is funny.
Yeah. Well, what about you, Matthew? What you got?
Well, I have more JavaScript this week. We're working on a big project, and we've kind of
crunch time, isn't it?
deadline on Monday. Yep. So I'm probably more curly braces, like floating behind my eyes.
Oh gosh, I feel for you. Have fun, Matthew.
Yes, thank you.
I'll think about you on the river.
Excellent.
We'll think about you while listening to Def Leppard.
Yes,
exactly right.
Def Leppard.
Like going back in time to
I'll get you a bag of
classic rock show.
And free of charge.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, folks, thank you so much for listening, and we hope you'll join us again for next week's show. Until then, so long and be well. Bye, guys.
Bye.